Today we are taking a comprehensive, analytical look at a recent line of discussion circulating within the currency community regarding the economic trajectory of emerging markets, specifically looking at commentary surrounding Vietnam, regional trade pivots, and how these broader economic discussions intersect with the financial landscape of Iraq. A recent statement from market commentator Mark Z, alongside John Dowling, highlighted Vietnam as an emerging cornerstone of regional economic development, pointing to its solid gross domestic product growth rate, nearing 7%, and its strategic pivot toward open international trade policies. The commentary suggested that Vietnam's economic strategy moves in tandem with global financial shifts, raising questions among observers about a phased approach to currency adjustments and how such developments might influence other international currencies, like the Iraqi Dinar. To evaluate these statements with the professional rigor our viewers expect, we need to separate speculative commentary from hard macroeconomic realities, examining what the data actually tells us about Vietnam's economy, Iraq's monetary landscape, and the broader mechanics of international exchange rates. When analyzing claims regarding Vietnam's positioning as an economic hub, it is essential to look directly at the fundamental economic data, verified by global financial institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Vietnam has indeed established itself as one of the most dynamic export-driven economies in Southeast Asia. Over the past decade, the country has achieved impressive annual real GDP growth rates, often exceeding 6 to 7%, driven primarily by strong manufacturing outputs, high volumes of foreign direct investment, and a strategic integration into global supply chains. Major international corporations have expanded their manufacturing footprints in Vietnam, drawn by competitive labor costs, improved infrastructure, and aggressive trade liberalization policies, including participation in major trade agreements, such as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This structural growth reflects genuine economic development, anchored by factory production, electronics manufacturing, textiles, and robust trade balances. However, when commentators frame this economic expansion as part of a global reset or an imminent administrative currency revaluation, it is vital to understand how currency valuation actually functions in modern international finance. In mainstream economics, currency appreciation occurs through defined mechanisms, either driven by market forces in a floating exchange rate system, or managed through deliberate policy adjustments by a central bank. The State Bank of Vietnam operates a managed floating exchange rate regime, where the Vietnamese Dong is pegged to a basket of foreign currencies, dominated primarily by the United States dollar. The primary goal of Vietnam's central bank is to maintain price stability, control domestic inflation, and ensure that Vietnamese exports remain competitively priced in international markets. Rapid or artificial revaluation of a currency can actually harm an export-oriented economy like Vietnam's by making its manufactured goods more expensive for foreign buyers, thereby reducing competitiveness and potentially slowing down GDP growth. Therefore, any policy shifts regarding the Vietnamese Dong are carefully calibrated by central bank authorities to support trade balance rather than to execute sudden currency shifts. To understand why commentary surrounding Vietnam often enters discussions about the Iraqi Dinar, we must look at how retail currency discussions have evolved over time. For many years, various online commentators and news aggregators have grouped exotic currencies together under a single umbrella narrative, suggesting that multiple nations will simultaneously adjust their exchange rates as part of an orchestrated international monetary realignment. While it is true that international financial institutions like the Bank for International Settlements and the IMF work toward global financial integration and standardizing banking regulations, there is no structural mechanism in sovereign finance for a synchronized arbitrary revaluation of multiple independent national currencies. Each sovereign nation's currency valuation is strictly governed by its own macroeconomic fundamentals, central bank foreign exchange reserves, fiscal balance, inflation rates, and balance of payments. Comparing Vietnam directly to Iraq reveals fundamental differences in their economic structures, monetary policies, and revenue sources. Vietnam is an industrial, diversified economy, heavily dependent on international trade and private enterprise investment. Iraq, on the other hand, is a hydrocarbon-dependent economy, where crude oil exports generate more than 90% of state fiscal revenues and account for the vast majority of foreign currency inflows entering the country. Because Iraq relies so heavily on a single commodity priced globally in United States dollars, its monetary policy operates under vastly different parameters than Vietnam's. The Central Bank of Iraq utilizes its official peg, currently set around 1,300 dinars per US dollar, to manage state revenues, control domestic purchasing power, and budget for public sector salaries and infrastructure development. Understanding these contrasting economic profiles helps clarify why events or performance metrics in Southeast Asia do not serve as a direct catalyst for monetary policy decisions made in Baghdad. Let us now focus directly on Iraq's current economic position and monetary policy landscape. The Central Bank of Iraq has been actively engaged in extensive financial sector reforms, designed to modernize the nation's banking infrastructure, combat financial illicit transfers, and transition the domestic economy away from heavy cash reliance. One of the most significant developments in recent years has been the implementation of electronic platforms and international compliance standards for foreign exchange transactions. Historically, Iraq relied heavily on physical daily currency auctions to supply local markets with United States dollars. Under guidance from international monitoring bodies and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Iraq has transitioned toward direct correspondent banking relationships, requiring commercial banks to execute foreign wire transfers through transparent, verifiable electronic systems compliant with anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing protocols. This systemic overhaul is critical for long-term economic health, but it also creates distinct short-term dynamics that followers of the Iraqi dinar must understand. As commercial banks adapt to stringent international compliance rules, the availability of foreign currency in the parallel market can experience temporary tightness, leading to a variance between the official central bank exchange rate and the parallel market rate found on local streets. The Central Bank of Iraq has repeatedly clarified that its official rate remains firm at 1,300 dinars per dollar for legitimate trade and official transactions, and its ongoing efforts focus on channeling all commercial trade through official banking channels to eliminate the parallel market premium. For observers analyzing the strength of the dinar, the key indicator to watch is not speculative commentary, but rather the central bank's progress in full banking sector integration and parallel market stabilization. In the short term, Iraq's economic performance is intimately tied to global crude oil price fluctuations and domestic fiscal execution. When global oil prices are elevated, Iraq's foreign exchange reserves held at the central bank increase, providing a robust buffer to back the national currency and cover import requirements. Total foreign reserves at the Central Bank of Iraq have maintained healthy levels, supplemented by gold reserves that bolster institutional confidence. However, when oil prices soften, state fiscal space contracts, highlighting the ongoing structural vulnerability of relying on oil revenues to finance public expenditures. In the short term, government spending on public wages, social support, and capital projects drives domestic liquidity, while central bank reserve management ensures the stability of the exchange rate peg against external shocks. From a long-term economic perspective, sustainable strengthening of the Iraqi dinar requires deep structural reforms that go far beyond monetary policy alone. Iraqi authorities and international financial advisors recognize that long-term currency value is a reflection of overall economic productivity, fiscal management, and institutional stability. For Iraq to achieve genuine economic diversification, it must cultivate non-oil sectors such as agriculture, domestic manufacturing, logistics, and tourism. Projects aimed at capturing associated petroleum gas, reducing expensive energy imports, and building domestic power generation infrastructure are crucial steps toward reducing foreign currency outflows. Additionally, Iraq's ongoing efforts to join the World Trade Organization and improve its business regulatory environment represent real tangible milestones that signal long-term economic maturation. It is also important to address the specific mechanics of currency revaluations versus gradual market-aligned currency shifts. In financial history, countries that have successfully revalued or strengthened their currencies over time have done so through long-term economic compounding, low inflation, fiscal surpluses, and sustained foreign investment. When a central bank adjusts an exchange rate peg, It calculates the precise impact on government budget revenues, national debt obligations, import costs and export competitiveness. A drastic, overnight revaluation of a currency by orders of magnitude would instantly alter the sovereign balance sheet in ways that could create massive domestic inflation, render state budgets unmanageable, or deplete foreign reserves rapidly to defend an unsustainable peg. Responsible central bankers prioritize stability, predictability, and purchasing power preservation over speculative revaluations. When evaluating commentary from figures like Mark Z or other news aggregators, viewers should approach these updates as community discussions rather than verified official central bank policy statements. Many online reports synthesize secondary opinions, rumors, and speculative theories regarding international banking shifts. While these discussions generate significant interest, official monetary decisions are published exclusively through formal channels, such as official statements from the Governor of the Central Bank of Iraq, official Gazette publications, and formal releases from the Ministry of Finance. By cross-referencing commentary with verified institutional data from the Central Bank of Iraq, the International Monetary Fund, and reputable global financial outlets, followers of the Iraqi Dinar can maintain a grounded, accurate perspective on real developments. Another critical aspect of responsible financial analysis is understanding risk management and avoiding speculative exposure. Physical currency holdings carry inherent risks, including exchange fees, wide bid-ask spreads, storage security concerns, and liquidity constraints. Exotic currencies are generally illiquid in international retail markets, meaning converting physical banknotes back into local fiat currency often involves significant transaction costs. Individuals following currency news should never treat physical banknote purchases as a guaranteed investment or a substitute for balanced traditional financial planning. Expecting sudden, miraculous wealth from currency holdings ignores standard economic principles and exposes individuals to unnecessary financial vulnerability. Looking at the broader global context, emerging markets across Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America are indeed navigating an evolving international trade environment. Countries like Vietnam demonstrate how structural industrialization, foreign direct investment, and trade openness create genuine economic value and currency stability over decades. Iraq is on its own distinct path, rebuilding its national infrastructure, reforming its banking sector to meet rigorous international standards, and attempting to pivot towards sustainable non-oil economic development. While both nations share the goal of economic modernization, their monetary policies are dictated by their unique domestic realities, reserve assets, and fiscal mandates rather than a shared global timeline. As we follow ongoing developments in Iraq's banking sector, our focus remains firmly on tracking tangible progress. The expanding adoption of point-of-sale electronic payments inside Iraq, the reduction of reliance on physical cash transactions, the implementation of comprehensive customs reform, and the progression of major regional infrastructure initiatives, like the Development Road Project. These real-world economic indicators provide the true barometer of Iraq's economic health and monetary stability. Progress in these areas builds a stronger foundation for the country's financial future, supporting domestic purchasing power and fostering broader economic confidence. We encourage all our viewers to remain diligent, analytical, and cautious when navigating currency updates online. Always prioritize official announcements, empirical economic metrics, and factual central bank disclosures over speculative timelines or unverified claims. By focusing on structural realities rather than hype, you equip yourself with the clear understanding needed to evaluate complex global economic news effectively. Thank you for watching this detailed breakdown on Iraqi Dinar news. If you appreciate grounded, factual, and analytical coverage of Iraq's economy and global monetary updates, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for responsible and objective analysis. Please remember that all content provided in this video is strictly for informational and educational purposes only and should never be construed as personal financial, investment, or legal advice. Always conduct your own independent research and consult with a certified financial professional before making any financial decisions.